We are Chris Lee, Blayne Gilmer, and Blake Lovell of Southeastern 14 here to preview every single game involving SEC teams this week. Right now, we are at Tennessee and Kentucky. The Vols, 13.5-point favorites with a 64.5-point over-under in this game. This can be seen at 7 Eastern on ESPN. That over-under and that final implies a predictive score of Tennessee 39, Kentucky 26. Blayne, the Vols hammered UT Martin in a game that told us very little. Kentucky had an off week. What are we thinking about this one going in?
I'm intrigued by it because it's two totally different styles of play, not only in the fact that Tennessee is different than virtually every team in college football with their pace of their offense and also how they create matchups with their receivers and things like that. Whereas in Kentucky's much more of a methodical pro style type offense. But the way that they go about winning games, Tennessee has played a lot of games that you would call pretty games, right? That look dominant from start to finish. That is not how you would describe Kentucky. Like the uglier Kentucky can make a game, the better for the Wildcats.
Yeah, I mean, if you're doing this from a betting standpoint, the under is hitting Kentucky's games, 6 of their 7 games this season. So if you're looking for, those high octane type games, that they haven't necessarily been there. And like you said, this is a difference in styles in terms of how these teams like to win, and I guess probably need to win if you're looking at it from Kentucky's standpoint. So yeah, it's certainly a matchup that I think we kind of look at the series history, and we know kind of how this worked out in Tennessee's favor over the years, but of course has gotten more competitive recently when you look at the matchups. But there are some things statistically when you look at these two teams that are very fascinating heading into this matchup.
Well, the Vols have perhaps the best offense in college football. Tennessee is averaging 50.1 points a game. Kentucky giving up 16.4. Tennessee's averaging 572 yards of total offense. Kentucky giving up 295 per play. Tennessee 7.5 yards per play. Kentucky giving up 5.04. And plus Tennessee doesn't turn the ball over a lot. Blayne, Kentucky's strength for years has been its defense, but I don't know that Kentucky has seen a team quite like it is going to run into this week.
They have not. I mean, unless you want to say that, Mississippi State to a certain extent can cross those things with the air raid, but we saw kind of back-to-back weeks comparison there, if you will, with how Alabama struggled to defend Tennessee and then completely shut down Mississippi State. So that's really the closest comparison you would have with that Kentucky defense facing a high-octane offense. But I will say this, I think Mark Stoops is about as good a defensive coach as you're going to find out there in terms of creating a culture, creating a system where guys are going to have good eye discipline, not get out of sorts. One thing I don't think you're going to see in this game is I don't think you're just going to see Tennessee receivers running wide but open down the field like they have in other games. I think they may go up and make some contested catches and make some really good plays, but I don't expect to see some of those mental errors out of Kentucky's defense that maybe even Alabama's defense had against Tennessee. But again, it's all about pace. It's all about how good a shape you're in. And Blake, I think it helps Kentucky, honestly, in terms of that, because they were off this past week. They had a chance to rest up a little bit and really zone in on what this Tennessee offense can be like.
Yeah, I mean, if you just look at the stats, I mean, Kentucky's not given up more than 24 points this season in a game. That's kind of an interesting thing to think about given who you're going up against here. But it's on the flip side of that. It's the same thing that I feel like I say every week is just you have not seen an offense like this with Tennessee. And we said the same thing, about Alabama. We said the same thing with some of the other teams that have played Tennessee. It's just really hard to prepare for. But I think Stoops having the longevity that he's had there, and, he got to see it last season. Now he gets to, he certainly has plenty of resources at his disposal to see what this offense is doing now this season under Hendon Hooker, and just I mean, again, it's like we said it, like, who is going to stop Tennessee? And, for Kentucky, like I mentioned, they're a team that has not given up a lot of points this season. But, you still just have not had to, on a play-by-play basis throughout the course of a 4-quarter game, go up against what you're going to go up against here in this Tennessee offense. And, as we keep saying too, guys, what have we talked about over the past several weeks? Yes, Hendon Hooker's been great. Jalen Hyatt, the emergence, but Cedric Tillman expected, I think, to be back for this one, and how significant that would be to add another weapon at their, convenience there as well for this offense. So that's another dynamic you have to think about heading into this matchup.
Yeah, I mean, Tillman, Hyatt, Brew McCoy, and Tennessee can run the ball. I mean, that's just – it was scary before, but as we've said throughout the season, Tillman was supposed to be Tennessee's best offensive player coming into the season, not named Hendon Hooker. I mean, my goodness, that's a nightmare.
It is, but it also, you have to argue, one of them is going to disappear. Like there's going to be one guy who, it's not like all three of them are just going to, bust out and produce. One guy, so, Jalen Hyatt's barely been a guy that's really started to produce. Does this mess up some of his, his rhythm with Hendon Hooker, that kind of stuff? So there's two sides of everything, but certainly it's a great problem to have if you're Josh Heupel.
Well, I mean, it's not like the offense can play a whole lot better than
exactly
with Cedric Tillman. So there's that. I mean, there's only so many points available to you in the game. Now, I know Kentucky's had some injuries on defense too. I don't want to neglect that side. So I'm curious whether Kentucky will be healthier coming into this week than it's been in past weeks.
Well, I mean, I just think having the bye with the gauntlet that they had, that's huge. Even Tennessee, they obviously they sat Tillman again. They didn't risk it against UT Martin or anything like that. But even just going up and having to line up and play and take hits and stuff like that, there's still some recovery time. It doesn't matter who you're playing against, if it's an inter squad scrimmage or whatever. But I think Kentucky, obviously will be the better rested team right here. So we'll see how much that comes into play, but it's going to be the environment is going to be against them. And the style of play is a total contrast, Chris.
Okay, before we switch sides of the ball, there's a lot of big games coming up this week in the SEC. To add some extra excitement, we at Southeastern 14 will be making some predictions in the Stakes app. That is STAKES. We want to hear from you guys if you agree or disagree with our takes. So go to playwithstakes.com/14, sign up for Stakes, place your prediction whether you're for or against our picks, which you can follow us in the app at Southeastern 14. That's our username. If you use the invite code Southeastern 14 when you sign up, you'll get a double welcome bonus. Free to sign up, free to play, free to brag if you beat us on your picks. No downside here. Sign up for Stakes. They're our title sponsor. Support the people who support us and have a good time while you do it. Okay. When Kentucky has the ball, the Cats, of course, got Chris Rodriguez Jr. back a couple weeks ago. That made a big difference in their offense for the season. Kentucky averaging just 26.4 points a game. That's one of the lower marks in the SEC. Just 374 yards and 5.83 yards per snap. We've talked about it. Kentucky gives up a lot of sacks. Tennessee is giving up 23.1 points a game, 421 yards a game, 5.43 a snap. Blayne, how do you see this matchup?
I'm just really intrigued to see if Kentucky can get Chris Rodriguez rolling early, if they can get any kind of sustained drives going, because what's the recipe to helping out your defense with Hendon Hooker is making sure you keep the ball out of his hands. So if you can do that and sustain some drives, run some clock off, because listen, that's the key of it, right? Managing the game, controlling the game. And nobody really does that better than Will Levis does. People like to give, there's varying opinions on Will Levis. Some people think, as I do, that he's going to be a top 5 draft pick and be a great NFL quarterback. Then there's some people that like to bag on him because his numbers aren't high and all that kind of stuff. But he is efficient. He's right under 70% completion on the year. And, the numbers aren't eye popping, but man, it seems like anytime there's a big play that needs to be made, even the Ole Miss game where they end up losing, he made the throw to win the game to Dane Key. They just they just didn't get set in time out on the outside. So I don't think Will Levis is going to be daunted by the environment of Rocky Top. And I think that Kentucky is really starting to get into their own and running the football here. Blake, I think they'll have a little bit of success with Chris Rodriguez and Will Levis now that he's had a week to heal that turf toe. I think you'll see him run the ball a good bit too.
Yeah, we talked about the importance of getting Rodriguez back, and I think now it's kind of he's hitting his groove now, where it's like maybe initially, you work some things out, but now kind of hitting his groove, and they're really confident, obviously, in what he can do. And like you said, just having the bye week, I think that's the most important point here, is not just preparing defensively for Tennessee's offense, but getting Will Levis completely ready to go for a game like this, where I think you're going to have to score some points here. Because look, Tennessee's given up points, right? They're a team that has given up points, and I think that's something where if you look at the playmakers on Kentucky's offense, they're good enough to put up points against Tennessee. It's just a matter, again, on the flip side, stylistically, how does this game play out? And it's going to be important, like you guys have talked about, for Kentucky. Keeping Tennessee off the field offensively will be a big key to this game. And I think this is where, again, we really see what this Kentucky team that, quite frankly, we've kind of talked about it in terms of them, go back to the Florida game on the road. I think even in the game against Ole Miss, they made some mistakes, but they were right there with a chance to win that game. So this has not really been a team that's been fazed by, being in a tough environment on the road. And I think this is one offensively. It's just, I think they'll have their opportunities. It's just, will they be able on the other side, I think, to stop enough of Tennessee's own opportunities. So,
and Chris, real quick, if they are able to get Chris Rodriguez going a little bit, it's not like Barian Brown and Dane Key don't have the ability, as Blake said, to make huge plays, especially Barian Brown and special teams. But I won't steal your thunder. I know you're about to get into special teams there. You always end up with special teams on these previews.
Well, yeah, that's one of the things. And I'm trying to look up the FEI rankings on that. They usually don't update those until a few days in, but Kentucky's had one of the top special teams units all year. Tennessee's just been kind of mediocre. Where Kentucky can kind of beat you is on kickoff returns. Barian Brown has had some long ones this year.
Or punt returns.
Of course, Tennessee, or punt returns. Of course, Tennessee did win a game because of special teams. The last game, kicked a field goal at the last second.
And their one punt turned out to be great because Alabama lost its mind and touched the ball. So there you go.
That's true. That's true. Kentucky was ranked. Well, it's not pulling it up right now, but anyway, okay, 18th. That'll be through all the games it has played. FEI will not update it. Tennessee, I think, was down near the bottom. I'll pull that up eventually. Okay, 83. No, I'm sorry. That's Middle Tennessee. Anyway, the Vols are down here somewhere. I saw Tennessee and I got all excited that I found it. But in any case, I don't know that special teams have been a huge deal for Tennessee. They have been for Kentucky. Penalties. Guys, the Vols, the most penalized team in the league. Now, it hasn't really hurt Tennessee yet, but 77 yards a game. Kentucky is the least penalized team in the league at 35 yards a game. Now, the weird thing about that is you think that penalties would point to discipline. Tennessee +5 in turnovers, Kentucky -4. Look, here's another thing. Tennessee, even though it is 7-0, the Florida and the Alabama plays came down to the last play, as did Pitt for that matter. That was in overtime. So Tennessee's played 3 close games, won all of them. Again, the defense, 421 yards given up. That's influenced somewhat by volume of snaps. You're going to give up a lot because on a per play basis, Tennessee 5.4 yards per snap they've given up. That's pretty good. I feel like there's just a lot of mixed signals here. I mean, Kentucky, we joked. I said Kentucky's nickname ought to be the Whirlpool because when it plays bad teams, it's a close game. When it plays good teams, it's a close game. They just pull everything to the middle. I think I'm
sure. Sorry, we're
no, we're all good. I think I'm still going to ride. Well, certainly, I'm going to ride with Tennessee to win the game. I think I like Tennessee in the 13.5 because of that turnover figure. Some of those have come on sacks, which Tennessee gets some. Kentucky cannot protect the passer. We saw what a nightmare it was in Neyland Stadium for Alabama to just, get off plays and everything like that. And it's not like this is the first time Kentucky has played in a hostile environment, but I don't have a great feel on this one, but I think I do like Tennessee and I like the over. How about you guys?
Give me Kentucky to cover. I think Tennessee wins, but I think Kentucky plays better on the road than they do at home. Honestly, I mean, Kentucky seems to not be daunted. You talk about you're not going to have a more crazy environment than you did in the Swamp week 2 after they were riding high. Anthony Richardson Heisman hype was everywhere. They had just beaten Utah, and Kentucky went in there and just ended that. So went in there and took care of business. They did so with discipline. They did so with special teams. All the things that we've said and key defensive plays. I think Tennessee is overall more talented right now, but give me Kentucky to cover because of Mark Stoops' defense and that team's culture.
Well, you guys know I'm picking Tennessee. I picked them in every game they played in this year. Until someone beats them, that's probably going to be the route I go in. I think I go back to the Cedric Tillman. If he's back, he's healthy. You've got to pick your poison somewhere. And with all those different weapons, I just think it's going to be a challenge probably for Kentucky to do that because you're adding a guy, let's not forget, had 1,000-yard receiving last year, 12 touchdowns. In addition to what we've seen from McCoy and Hyatt. So I think that becomes a big challenge for Kentucky. I do think there's something to what you guys are saying, though, and let me go to covers to tell you why. The road team 6-1 against the spread in the last 7 meetings between these two teams. Underdog 5-1 against the spread in the last 6 meetings, which obviously a lot of that is leaned towards Kentucky. So you said it, Blayne. Kentucky has, I mean, and I echoed it earlier, that they've played pretty well on the road, and they don't seem to be phased by these road games, whether it was Florida, whether it was Ole Miss. They win the Florida one, have a chance to win the Ole Miss one. And guess what, guys? We said it right after. A lot, just by default, our attention after they beat Alabama for Tennessee, where did all the discussion go? It went to, boy, that Tennessee-Georgia game is going to be huge, right? There's your game. Winner goes to the SEC championship. I don't think that's Josh Heupel's letting that talk in, but it is something where I was one of the ones I was like, hold on a second, let's not overlook Kentucky, because Kentucky, I think, is at least capable of making this interesting. The trends seem to suggest, if you're looking at it from a betting standpoint, that Kentucky's got a shot to certainly make this interesting. But again, you guys know I'm picking Tennessee here.
Yeah, Chris, too, I was going to say real quick, this game, regardless of the outcome of it, Tennessee will know they've been in a football game. Kentucky's a physical football team, and they do have Georgia the next week, so it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, one minor correction. We like to get our stuff right here. Tennessee has zoomed up the FEI special teams rankings the last couple of weeks. Don't know what the update is after the UT Martin game, but Tennessee was 40 heading into that game. The Vols were in the hundreds just a couple of weeks ago. So I think that LSU game and that Alabama game really helped Tennessee. So anyway, Vols good in all 3 phases. Maybe not great on defense, but maybe better than people think at times. In any case, we are previewing every single SEC game this week. We preview every single football game involving SEC teams this year. Best way to get those is to hit that subscribe button. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again soon at Southeastern 14.